Has anyone ever looked you in the eye and told you the one thing you've always avoided admitting to yourself? You're not free. Yes, you. You're trapped inside a structure you built with your own hands, laying each brick every time you avoided disapproval, each time you let fear of failure rewrite your dreams, each time you forced a smile when what you really wanted was to scream. That tightness in your chest, do you think it's just pressure? It isn't. It's not simple worry either. It's the unbearable weight of a life lived according to someone else's script, designed to impress people who never cared enough to applaud. And here's the bitter truth. No one ever asked you to live that way. No one forced you to betray your voice, to sacrifice your freedom, or to erase who you truly are. But you did it anyway. You willingly fastened yourself to roles and standards that were never yours to begin with. You traded your sense of self for momentary praise, for a version of acceptance that vanishes as quickly as it comes. So now when you look inward, what remains? What part of you hasn't been diluted, distorted, or shaped by fear and the need to fit in? How much of you is real, and how much was sculpted just to survive? They convinced you that control was the answer. They sold you a polished lie, that if you could just manage every detail, if you could perfect every aspect of your life, then everything would finally align. But here's the truth, the one no one dares to speak aloud. Absolute control is a myth, a clever distraction designed to keep you chasing shadows, draining your energy and pulling you further from what actually matters. And the more tightly you hold on, the more you spiral into dread, into quiet numbness, into a mechanical existence that only resembles life from a distance. You find yourself endlessly preparing for a moment that never arrives. Have you ever wondered why, even when everything looks perfect on the surface, you still feel empty? It's because none of it truly belongs to you. Your victories, your relationships, even your thoughts, contaminated by the constant need to be seen in a certain light. The more you chase approval, the more disconnected you become from your essence. That inner flame you once saw in yourself, it's barely flickering now, faded by years of living for someone else's applause. High above the world in his solitary tower during the 16th century, Michel de Montaigne uncovered a truth that still eludes many today. Detachment does not equate to indifference. On the contrary, it is the only real path to internal liberation. He saw clearly that the true constraints in life aren't imposed by our circumstances, but by our compulsive desire to control what we simply cannot, and by our relentless need to be accepted, to fit in, and to silence any voice that might disapprove of us. But imagine this. What if the very detachment you've been taught to fear is the doorway to your own release? What if, even briefly, you had the courage to loosen your grip on that lifeline you've been holding on to, the one you believe is keeping you afloat, but that's actually suffocating you with every breath? Here lies the paradox. The tighter you cling to control, the more it evades you. The more you chase approval, the further you drift from your authentic self. And the more you resist the changes that life inevitably brings, the harder and more chaotically they hit when they arrive. The world has never conformed to your expectations, and it never will. Recognizing this isn't giving up, it's awakening. Life, with all its disorder and unpredictability, calls for just one brave act: surrender. Release the craving for applause. Release the fear of falling short. Release the persona you've carefully constructed to protect yourself from the opinions of others. Now take a moment and envision how your life could look if you stopped living in fear of judgment. Who would you be if the opinions of others no longer echoed in your mind? What might you pursue if you knew you were safe from ridicule? That version of yourself you're beginning to see, the one unburdened, daring, and whole, isn't some distant ideal. That's your truest self waiting to be lived. Beneath the surface of your discomfort lies a more disturbing realization. Your fear of relinquishing control isn't just about fear. It's about not recognizing who you are without it. The restraints you've clung to for so long have fused with your identity, and the idea of loosening that grip shakes you to the core. You dread the possibility that, once stripped of every external marker, you might find nothing of substance within. Centuries ago, from the silence of his secluded retreat, Montaigne confronted this very truth. His message was harsh, yet liberating. You must let go of all that you are not if you hope to uncover your truest self. That elusive freedom you long for doesn't lie somewhere distant. It waits just beyond the fear that currently holds you captive. It can't be found in a trendy bestseller or unlocked through inspirational catchphrases, nor is it hidden in some spiritual secret. No, it's already here, in this very breath, waiting for the moment you muster the courage to face yourself fully and declare, I no longer need validation. I no longer need to impose control over what cannot be governed. I no longer need to wear a mask that hides who I am. So let me ask you, are you ready to let go? Or will you continue gripping the comforting illusion of control, even as it slowly pulls you further from your essence? You stand at the threshold of a road you fear to tread, yet deep inside, something in you is silently begging you to take that first step. Only you can decide whether to remain within the refined prison you've meticulously crafted, or to dive headfirst into the unknown, into a kind of liberation that may disorient you, but will also bring you back to life. This is the art of surrender, the discipline of peeling away the layers to discover what lies beneath. And yes, the journey will shake you. But hear this. The only thing more terrifying than embracing your freedom is staying rooted in the exact place you are now. You were conditioned to believe that success and accomplishment define a life well lived. But what if, after all this time, you realize those goals weren't even yours to begin with? That you've spent years scaling ladders built by others, never pausing to ask if the summit they aim for was ever meant to be yours. Now that you've reached such heights, pause and ask yourself, what lies before you? Is it the breathtaking horizon you once dreamed of, or merely a distorted reflection shaped by someone else's ambitions? Our culture has conditioned us to worship a vague, hollow concept we call success, feeding us the illusion that certain accomplishments will finally deliver peace. But have you ever truly questioned what success means? More importantly, have you examined whose version of it you're chasing? Perhaps you've already fulfilled the script handed to you, studied the sensible subject, secured the respectable career, built a circle of friends deemed acceptable by social norms, and yet something inside you still aches. That quiet discomfort that stirs you awake at night? It's not mere discontent, it's your deeper self, the part you've buried, crying out to be heard. Centuries ago, removed from society's distractions, Montaigne uncovered a revelation that still unsettles us today. True success has nothing in common with what we're taught to idolize. It has no connection to prestige, material wealth, or the applause of others. The kind of success that few dare to pursue, the only kind that truly matters, is found in the uncompromising alignment with your authentic self. But to arrive there, you must first dismantle the roles you've been performing. You must peel back the layers of expectation and image to discover who you truly are beneath the surface. Over time, the mask you wear may have begun to feel like part of your skin, so familiar that you've forgotten it's there. But your mind remembers. Even when silence, some part of you continues to rebel, quietly chipping away at the falsehood. Do you want the truth, even if it's as painful as it is liberating? As long as you keep hiding behind carefully crafted personas, genuine peace will remain elusive. The anxiety, the chronic tension, the sense of emptiness, they're not meaningless symptoms. They are the predictable cost of a life shaped around the expectations of others. And here lies the hardest truth, one Montaigne understood with brutal clarity. Most people would rather stay numb in a fabricated existence than face the terrifying freedom of living as their truest self. Far too many people go through life half awake, settling for brief glimpses of happiness instead of daring to uncover the full truth of who they are. And you, where do you fall? Are you one of the few brave enough to risk discovering your true self? Or have you found solace in the dull security of routine? Routine acts like a powerful tranquilizer. It keeps you busy, fills your hours, and lulls your spirit into submission through endless repetition. But what you might not notice is the steep price of this so-called comfort, the slow and quiet erosion of your inner freedom. And that freedom, so often confused with the ability to do whatever you want, is in fact something far deeper. True liberty lies in the courage to live in alignment with your own truth. It means daring to step away from what's expected of you, to walk away from inherited identities, and to accept that sometimes being real might disappoint those you love. Maybe that thought scares you. Maybe you're wondering whether being fully yourself will cost you everything you've worked for. But here's the contradiction at the heart of it all. If your authenticity can dismantle what you've built, perhaps those things were never yours to begin with. The connections that truly matter, the goals with genuine value, and the paths that reflect who you really are, these won't collapse under the weight of your honesty. Quite the opposite. It's only through living authentically that you can start to recognize what actually belongs in your life and what was only ever taking up space. The truth is, the risks aren't as great as you fear. And the rewards? They're far greater than you imagine. Still, none of it begins until you take that first fearless step into the unknown, into a life that may feel unpredictable, but for the first time will truly be your own. Which leads us back to a timeless lesson from Montaigne. Detachment is not the absence of love, but the understanding that love and creativity only flourish in freedom. Anything gained through fear or obsession will, in the end, possess you. This is the truth few dare to speak. Most people are paralyzed by the idea of loss because they've never allowed themselves to see what might grow in its place. They cling to relationships, careers, and familiar roles, unaware that real life only begins once you let go of the things that no longer reflect who you are. So now look inward and ask yourself with honesty, what will you choose? Will you keep floating along, too afraid to face the person you've always been? Or perhaps at long last, you'll summon the resolve to let go of what's known and step boldly into the unfamiliar, a place that unnerves you, yet holds the key to something far deeper, the essence of who you are, beyond the layers of fear, approval, and control. This was the solitary path Montaigne chose from his quiet sanctuary. And now that same road stretches out before you. Will you dare to walk it? Or will you settle into the passive role of spectator in your own existence? Only you can decide. As we tread that road, something profound becomes clear. Storytelling is far more than a vehicle for transmitting feelings or concepts. It becomes a mirror reflecting our search for identity. Every time we craft or share a narrative, whether consciously or instinctively, we confront a reflection of ourselves, the person we are, or the person we long to become. In this way, narrative becomes a powerful tool of self-inquiry, where each storyline and character acts as a symbol of our hidden dreams or buried fears. We often overlook that fiction can serve as a safe arena to explore life's possibilities, a place to simulate emotions, test outcomes, and imagine alternate paths without risking real consequences. And in periods marked by turmoil or collective anxiety, like the times we now endure, these stories take on even greater significance. They become both refuge and release. But beyond their comfort, they challenge us to be bolder than we typically dare, to surpass the mental borders we impose on ourselves, and to slip into ways of seeing the world that expand our sense of possibility. This brings us to a profound insight. How much influence do the narratives we tell ourselves have over the decisions we make daily? It's quite possible that these internal scripts act as subtle lenses, shaping how we perceive and engage with the world, and ultimately steering the course of our lives. Seen from this perspective, storytelling isn't only a social or artistic act. It becomes an intimate source of transformation. Through the language we choose to define our identity, it has the power to reshape both the moment we're living and the path ahead. And so we arrive at a provocative question. What if changing the story we tell within could be the catalyst for transforming everything beyond? It's entirely plausible that countless people live enclosed within narratives they never chose, scripts handed down to them, filled with limitations, failures, and predefined roles they never questioned, but quietly absorbed as truths. From this vantage point, reclaiming the pen and authoring your own life becomes a radical act of self-liberation. It's a shift from being shaped by circumstance to becoming the architect of a renewed identity, one capable of reframing past experiences and envisioning alternative futures. And there's a fascinating phenomenon within this process. The stories we tell about ourselves don't just reflect who we are. They help construct the reality around us. When we speak of ourselves with clarity and conviction, those words begin to carve paths in the world. They influence our relationships, the opportunities that arise, and how others respond to us. In essence, our internal narrative operates as a silent script, directing the flow of our lives with subtle but enduring force. To take deliberate command of that story is not only an act of introspection, it is a strategic reorientation. Yet we must also honor the contradictions that live within our personal narratives. Our lives aren't clean, linear progressions, and to pretend otherwise is to flatten the complexity of the human experience. A truthful narrative embraces uncertainty, missteps, and paradox. It allows the messiness to coexist with meaning. The most resonant life stories are rarely tidy. They carry unresolved tension, unanswered questions, and bursts of insight that appear in the fog of doubt. It is within this fragmentation that the essence of storytelling and of life truly lives. Perhaps the most profound realization is this: we are never finished shaping who we are. Each conversation, every decision, even the quiet spaces in between, subtly rewrites our personal script. We remain perpetual co-authors of an ever-evolving manuscript, sometimes aware of the revisions, sometimes not, but always sculpting the form our lives will take. If you've reached this point, you've likely touched a deeper understanding. We are not merely side characters in someone else's tale. We are the storytellers engaged in a dynamic process of creation. And perhaps the most hopeful truth of all is this: there is no final draft. Each new day offers a blank page, not just to add to what has been, but to reshape it entirely. What once appeared to be a sorrowful ending may in time reveal itself as the crucial threshold before transformation begins. This may well be the subtle alchemy of the human journey, the capacity to reshape wounds into symbols, failures into turning points, and silence into charged anticipation. But stay vigilant. The most profound insight is still to come. What if the heart of authentic living isn't about knowing precisely which story we believe we're narrating? There's an unexpected grace in embracing uncertainty, in not knowing whether your life is playing out as a farce, a tragedy, or a grand epic. You touch something deeply freeing. And perhaps the most powerful narratives aren't the ones that end with rousing ovations, but the ones that leave you yearning to continue, because the most important chapter has yet to be written. True freedom begins where the need for approval ends. We build our lives brick by brick, adjusting to the expectations of others and losing ourselves in someone else's version of success. Yet genuine happiness cannot be achieved through the pursuit of control or external recognition. Only by letting go of false attachments and the fear of being misunderstood can we attain true wholeness. A conscious refusal to live by imposed roles is not a defeat, but a return to oneself. Life finds its meaning not in reaching someone else's heights, but in following an inner path free of pretense. Each of us is the author of our own story, and every day is a chance to rewrite it with honesty. The key is to dare to live not for applause, but in harmony with who we truly are. Then every failure will mark the beginning of growth, and every ending will become a step toward a true new beginning.